I often get asked, or the topic often comes up, why are stories so important for children? And I tend to look at it a little differently. Stories are critically important for human beings. As adults, we want to pretend that we've gone beyond stories, that we're not susceptible to stories. But of course we are. The most jaded group of fact-loving CPAs can be swayed with stories, and there are plenty of examples where that's been tested and shown to be true. Children tend to accept at face value that there is truth and wisdom and learning in stories, fiction stories, non-fiction stories. It's not that they're any different than adults. It is, I would say, a more important question is, what happens along the road to adulthood that makes us think we can set stories behind us? And if we could look at what does that in culture after culture around this, not in every culture, but in many cultures around on this planet, I think that would be a much more valuable focus. Sure, stories are important for children because they're struggling to put together their banks of prior knowledge, build up enough experiences so they can think about the way they think it's supposed to be. And because their brains are wired for story, they're very readily built and accepting of information that comes in story form. The same is true with adults. But we tend to fight against it. Partly it's we want to outgrow childhood. And when you're 12 and 13 and 14 years old, you don't want to be called a child anymore. So anything that you associate with childhood, you want to set behind you. And that's really natural, and that's fine. More generally, though, you didn't see this phenomenon occur until well after the beginning of the science revolution, late 1600s, 1700s, which makes me think, well, there's got to be a connection there, that we thought we were going past myth and past story and into science, which means then that the thing that I love to investigate, the process that I like to use to get at information, science, is in this case the bad guy for helping to turn us against the thing that I love the most, story. But notice how, in order to make sense out of that, I had to put it in story form. We have main character, bad guy, the antagonist, and because I'm still a story animal like everybody else, and we have to think of it in those terms. But cultures that have been isolated from the mainstream of science development and pervasive science thinking over the last 300 or 400 years, those that we would call more traditional cultures, you don't see adults rejecting story wisdom as you do in the Western cultures that have embraced science.